Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh.
And Reg.
And we're grateful to be back on with you yet again. There is a plethora of things to get into. First off, some interesting news that we're going to share with you is that we're actually going to be releasing for a short period of time one of our paid episodes that you're going to see tomorrow in regards to the BRICS nations and kind of what's happening on a global level with our economies and what's that mean for the little guy such as us. And we're kind of showing that because there's some time-sensitive information in that episode that is actually going to be coming up or likely to see this week as the BRICS nations will be meeting with each other or meeting together to kind of formulate their plans of what they're going to do with their new currency, what's going to back that currency, how they're going to look to expand the BRICS nations and all of that. So I think that will be really cool to just give you an idea of what's coming down the pipe. It's a bit of a black pill, I will admit, but hopefully it gives you some tools to give you or some ideas to give you so that you can figure out how you want to adjust in your personal life. So we'll be releasing that tomorrow as a bonus for y'all. But for today, we got some stuff to get into. First, we'll touch a little bit on what the heck that BRICS meeting is all about. We're going to be touching on our global economic outlook between the G7 and the BRICS nations. And then as well as just the weird political rhetoric that is currently coming out of our country. And it looks like the cold, and this is I'm not speaking for myself and Reg, I'm just speaking for myself on this one. From what I'm seeing, we're seeing an uptick in the cold civil war that is currently happening between ideas and information. And we're going to talk on that today of what's going on. And as someone who's been out of the country for the past couple of weeks, I'm interested in kind of hearing what's happening on the ground over there. So from your perspective over there, Reg, but that's the plans we're getting into. But how you feeling, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing good, honestly. Yeah, I actually recently had to stop following a couple people on Instagram.
Oh, you officially had to get to that point, eh?
I had to. I found that so there was one media, very left-leaning journalist that I had on my Instagram. I had her on there for 3 weeks, maybe less.
Couldn't do it anymore.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. I was just like, oh wow. I was like, this, because I keep preaching that you want to hear from both sides and you don't shut out either side. I also am a believer in mental health, and every time I looked at that account, I felt my blood boiling because it was you are just just making me seethe. Honestly, I'm without words just because I was so mad reading all these different things that they were putting up or watching all the videos that they were putting up, and everything was so slanted and just clickbaity and just here I am trying to get your attention either by what I'm wearing or by the words that I'm using or what have you. And it's the content and the impact of the news doesn't have any bearings on reality. It's just what can I throw out there that's going to get me attention and get me clicks and get me followers? And I was just that's not really reporting in my opinion. That's just annoying. So I had to unfollow because I was just I can't do it anymore. It's driving me nuts.
Yeah, that person in particular, I officially have categorized them as I've taken them out of the journalist category and put them into the activist category. And that's exactly kind of what they do.
Yeah, well, it's just I work with very left-leaning activist types and wonderful people. And I'm just what is this person rooting for? It just seems protect the status quo, protect the status quo. And it's status quo isn't working. Everyone agrees across the spectrum, right, left, center, everyone says it's not working. And everything that you are doing right now is just one, like I said, self-gratifying, or two, protecting the status quo. And I'm just I can't do it. You're frustrating the hell out of me.
Well, they're really pumped that they hit 20,000 followers on TikTok.
I know. Yeah.
Congratulations, not really on that. I think it was mainly just mind-boggling the amount of videos they posted to eventually get to that level. I was impressed. So there was that. But I agree with you. I still follow them. I will still fight to follow them.
Yeah.
As hard as it can be to be like, oh,
So
that's where you're going this time. But as I
there
said,
there was
sorry.
one though. There was one video that like was the reason why I unfollowed, and the video was like the person was like there in the video, and they were like, when you start trending on Twitter, and then she's like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and she's like kind of moving her chest up and like doing like pouty lips, and I'm just like, what is this? Like, why are you in my feed right now? Like, no. And that was just like, that was the nail in the coffin. I was like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, she loves the attention. She loves grabbing the attention. That's as I said, we're in the attention economy. So
Yeah.
that's her game, and she, a lot of people fall for the bait. There's times where you definitely need on her page. The other side of the argument definitely needs to be stated. However, don't for those who follow her and you know who we're talking about, don't fall for the bait. It's good to see what she's posting, just so you know what the other side's posting and what they're kind of what the rage farming that they're doing. But don't fall for it. Just know that that's how I, from my perspective on it, I follow because I want to see what they're saying, what's going on, and so I can adjust myself and just figure out, how I want to kind of work on my messaging. Because if I come across on this side of the spectrum that she comes across on that side, I don't want to come across that way. I don't want to be that person. So it's also helpful in that regard for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But
it's like, to me, it was just kind of equivalent to like, you see all the jacked gym bros that are just like, casually flexing or just wearing the t-shirt that's just a little too small. It's just like, it was all just, attention grabbing. And it was like, yeah, regardless of gender, just that kind of content is just not for me. And I was like, nope.
Oh,
don't have time in my day for it.
I'm trending again. Oh, surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Anyway.
And here we are. And she made it into the intro of our show. Congratulations. We appreciate it. Gilmore Girls. Here we go. Alrighty. So first off, BRICS Nation. Big things are going down. One thing that kind of is hampering the BRICS nations right now is Evergrande went bankrupt again.
I know.
Big news coming out there. I remember me and Dalton talking about that almost exactly 2 years ago when it first went down, when they kind of went bankrupt in China. Now they're filing for bankruptcy in the States. And this company seems to be slowly falling apart more and more. So the BRICS nations are kind of getting together for their summit this week, which is a big deal. They're going to hold its 15 heads of state and government summit in Johannesburg. The South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, and Chinese President Xi Jinping, and Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi are expected to attend. The Russian President Vladimir Putin will not attend in person due to an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court for alleged war crimes in Ukraine. It's surprise. And Putin will participate in the summit virtually and will be represented in Johannesburg by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. So a few details have emerged about what they plan to discuss, but the one thing is BRICS expansion. It's going to be on the docket for what they're going to talk about. And the other thing is, this is what's rumored, and we're going to alluding to that into the episode that we're releasing tomorrow, is the fact they are going to be talking about what's going to be backing their new currency that they're going to be releasing, which at that point, if they decide to do what we think they're going to do, that's going to put them head to head with America and the G7, and things are going to get wild.
They're definitely going to get, as they say, muy caliente, like definitely spicy. That's for sure. And the big thing is, like, what does this mean for our world, I guess? Because I was listening to a couple different articles, like talking about BlackRock's investments into arms and arms manufacturers. And it's kind of like, they would do quite well with a, disturbance of the peace, I will say. So yeah, I'm just like, that is not where I want to head with things. But like, you've got so much turmoil happening. Like I'm surprised they're having it in Johannesburg, honestly, because like South Africa having its like turmoil right now, and then the rest of the world not very happy. It's like, what is it they call it? The summer of love. It's like people are not happy right now, and so I think that yeah, there's definitely some pieces in play right now that could lead to some not so great outcomes for the world.
Yeah. So there's some things to kind of think about and look at. There was actually a video that you sent my way the other day, which is essentially kind of showing the global buying power between the G7 nations, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
America, Canada, Europe, all those homies. And then you got the BRICS nations, which is, Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa,
China.
and China. So there's, you know, this animation I think is really interesting. And so we're just going to kind of play it and just give you an idea of where things are at, where things are going, and why there's such a disturbance of the peace these days. What's been going on? But as you see, this thing starts out is like the G7 was very dominant, in the early 90s at 45%. And then slowly as time has gone on, BRICS has been raising and rising with the amount that they've taken over uh, across the world in the global economy. And the G7's decreased. So now we're getting to the point where we're hitting, say 2008 right now, it's down to 35%. BRICS is at 25%. And now they're kind of, the lines keep converging. And now we're getting to the point where the lines are kind of getting closer to almost touching in 2018. And now they're just crossing in 2020. In 2021, BRICS is going up, G7 is going down. And now the forecast of what's going to happen by, say, 2030 or 2028 in this example is BRICS is going to be at 33.65% and G7 is going to be at 27.77%.
So I like this, and like I said, I know I sent this to you. The one thing that I think might be interesting is the fact that they keep talking about the fact that China's overestimated its population by about 100 million, and that they're actually worried about like the Chinese population like heading for collapse just because it's so top heavy right now, and it's heading to be worse. We talk a lot about actually in Nova Scotia about the aging population and what that means, and basically what that is the working class moving into retirement and then not having that like economic generating force of a population. And so I think that, you know, we might see things start to trend that way that they have predicted in that kind of future section. I think that it might be interesting to see like what happens when you hit like 2030, because that's when they were saying that they're going to see within this decade the population decline really, really affecting China. So yeah, I don't know.
I think that's where part of the war is happening in general on the global level, right? Because we're facing the same thing. We're not going to face it as soon as they are, but we're facing it. We have peddled information to our people that, first off, everyone's broke. So not as many people are having kids. We're also peddling the idea that, think about yourself, YOLO, kids weigh you down, not worth the time, not worth the energy. There's an increasing, and this is obviously a touchy subject for many, and I understand it, but there's an increasing narrative that abortions are good, which also is going to decrease how many kids you're pointing out. And I think in general, I think the overall mentality towards kids is starting to trend more negatively than it ever was. So I think we're facing the same thing, but what we're trying to subsidize it with is immigration. And so we're trying to take people from China and really take them out. That's what is my guess of what's happening.
See, I know we sit on different sides of the abortion debate, but so that's a whole other can of worms for another day. But what I will say is that the problem is, though, in our country too, like we just don't have houses for everyone. And so while we're saying like, yeah, immigrate people so that we keep our population high and we don't run into the same problems that China is going to be facing, where we have a working class that is aged to a point where they can no longer work and generate, and they're starting to draw more, and they're drawing more on healthcare, and they're drawing more on like the old age benefits and things like that. I think that in our country, at least, like, I think that might actually be like a bit of a reprieve for us, like that change in population demographic, just because I think that like we just don't have the space to house everyone right now. I would actually say, like, we need to put a pause on our immigration just for a little bit, just to get caught up. And I know that that's the absolute opposite of what the Liberal Party right now is asking for. They were talking about bringing in 500,000 people by, I forget what date it was, but it was just absurd. It was within the next 5 years, basically. I think it was 2025. They wanted to bring in 500,000 people. And it was like, where are you going to put those people? and the video that was clipped, they clipped it, him saying that they want to bring in 500,000 people by 2025, along with another one saying like how great it is that they put money into housing because they built 214 new homes. And it's just like, I think the end of it is just a meme where the guy's like, what? Like 214, 500,000 people. Like, this math does not add up. And it's wild. But to just even like talk about your parent thing, because being a parent, having a kid is a lot of work. It really is a lot of work. It's very rewarding. Like, I'm really glad that I had my daughter. I like, light of my life, like, best thing I ever created. And but like I said, like, she is a lot of work, and she's a lot of time invested. But at the same time, I think that she's a lot cheaper than people think. Like, you don't have to get like top of line everything. It's the same way when like people live their lives. Like, you don't need like the branded whatever. Like, you can actually get by and do quite well with very little. And so, yeah, with her, like, she's actually not that expensive. The biggest thing for us is diapers. But like, aside from that, it's not that hard. And so, yeah, just kind of like thinking about that and thinking about just everyday life. It's the same thing. Like, you can choose to eat out every day, and you can choose to wear brand name clothing. You can choose to, have a more expensive vehicle, or you can choose to do it more frugally and use your money elsewhere. And that's the same with parenting. Like, you don't have to be spending it all. And anybody who tells you otherwise, you don't need them.
Totally.
So.
Well, okay, let's talk about another debate that also has come up too, is the fact that the whole world's burning and everything is just going to hell. So why have kids? That's another argument that's been coming up a lot as well.
I hate that one. It's because, like, that the people who are not the planners, not like having like good foresight and stuff like that, like, they're the ones that are having lots of kids. and that you have some very like very far right leaning people who are like, we need to have more kids to raise more troops, kind of thing, to support our cause. And so it's like, no, we need more good people in the world. We need more good people having people and raising them right. So yeah, I'd say that's where I'm at.
I mean, the math is there, though. There's one side who typically, doesn't want to have kids. And there's another side of that political spectrum where they do want to have kids. So eventually, at some point, you're going to have more conservative people, I imagine, as you go in life, if that's the trend that's going.
Yeah. Either way, like I said, good people need to have more good people. So that's where I look at it. Like, but again, bodily autonomy. If you don't want to have kids, don't have kids. But like I'm saying, I think that the rhetoric that's out there, it's not the entire truth.
Cool. I just want to clear up one thing, because you threw this jab in a little earlier, and I just want to clear up this before we move on.
Okay. Yeah.
Is you talked about the abortion debate and how we fall on different sides of it. What were you referring to with that debate in particular?
Again, it comes back to my idea of like bodily autonomy. Like, I think that people should have the right to abortion.
So that wasn't the debate I was referring to.
Oh, okay. What were you thinking?
We're not even talking about that. I was just talking about in general, if abortion's talked about more positively than ever has, then more abortions are going to happen, thus leading to less people being on the planet, period. That's what I was getting at. That's all I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That wasn't a debate I was going to rehash right here, right now.
What? You don't want to get into that one? How many minutes we got?
Turns into a 3-hour show.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from what I'm reading, what I'm seeing is almost every country, it looks like, is going through some type of population decline. Even though we're being told that we have too many people on the planet. So I'm kind of curious of like where that comes from, where the nuance is, where the tension is in those stats. And
because like that's something that doesn't make sense to me, because like people are like, I'm not going to talk about the carbon tax because it just also annoys me. But like people keep talking about like, you know, the effect we have on the planet, and you know, we're consuming too much and things like that. It's like, well, if you have less people consuming, then shouldn't things be getting better for the planet? And I don't know if it's just like we're now taking on more stuff per individual than we ever have in all of humanity's timeline, and that's causing a problem, or what. But I kind of think the same thing. It's like, okay, well, if you have less people, less mouths to feed, less, you know, people to house, you're going to have less impact on the earth. So therefore, wouldn't that be in the benefit of creating sustainability for our planet? But anyway, it's just not good for economic sustainability, because if you have these waves of like high population, low population, high population, low population, it makes it really hard to do any kind of economic planning or financial planning for social services, for healthcare, for the things that people need as they age.
All right, I think that leads us well into the next segment here. And this is a story that came up this week that was alarming to me, and it led to a lot more kind of spin-off rhetoric that I wasn't a huge fan of. But we're going to jump over to the Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie, Joly, who's apparently keeping a close eye on the American election coming up here in about 15 months. And the article is by the CBC. It says that Canada mulling game plan if the U.S. takes a far-right authoritarian shift, says Joly. We are certainly working on scenarios, she said in French during an interview with a Montreal radio station on Wednesday. Joly added that Ottawa's close political and economic ties to the U.S. mean that we must certainly prepare several scenarios. She suggested Canada has a game plan in mind, but wouldn't go into details. In general, there is our game plan precisely to be able to manage what could be a rather difficult situation, she said. I will work with my colleagues and with the mayors, the provincial premiers, with the business community, and with the unions, with everyone in the country, so that we are ready regardless of the election outcome.
That's if the Liberal Party stays in power long enough to see an American election, because like, I don't know.
Well, the American election is going to happen before ours.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
if something gets called.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But yeah, I find that kind of annoying, because it's like, I'm not a Trump supporter, and I will say that fervently. However, when Trump was in power, America didn't go to war, amazingly enough. It's like with the Democrat presidents, America did go to war. So it's like, you know, purely on a people dying standpoint, it's like, you know, Trump might have been awful in a lot of other personal ways, but as far as like killing other people, he didn't do a lot of that. So that's kind of a win. But
I still think back to his CNN town hall that happened, you know, I think it would have been 6 months ago at this point, 8 months ago. And they asked, are you in support of the war in Ukraine? And, would you fight back? This, that, the other. And I thought he had a good response, a good political response to it. He's like, my only goal here is to help people stop dying.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's the human response.
Yeah. And no kidding. Right.
No war. We don't want no warmongers up in here.
Yeah. And it's funny because like, I think that, because I was talking to my brother actually, just the other day about like, cause he was like asking questions of like life and morality and the meaning of life and what is right, what is wrong, you know, just regular over the dinner conversation, you know? And, one of the things we talked about was just that idea of like, just doing what you can and making the world a better place than what it was when you got here. And it's like, when you look at some of these people who are just like not doing that, it's like, okay, we need to get rid of those people, whether or not you agree with their personal comments or, you know, what they are doing in their personal life or how many models they're marrying. Like, honestly, you know, less people are dying under that person than they were at other times. So it's like, yeah, you know, you balance the good with the bad. And it's like I said, it's always a trade-off. Everything is a trade-off. You're never going to get a perfect situation. So you always balance whatever trade-offs you can to do good by the most people. And this kind of rhetoric here about mulling over the far right, it just, that to me is just like, that's fear mongering. It's needless. Like, we don't need that right now. Just, yeah, it's just this idea of creating the far right is this like boogeyman that's going to come and like, you know, take away your rights in your sleep. Like, it's annoying. And it's like, it's so divisive. And it just seems to be that like this narrative that's being peddled all across Canada right now. But
Let's we've talked about this before, but this is the part I have an issue with, is you have the left's people on the left who have gone so far left, that they've drifted so far left, that they turn to you, and the distance that they've created makes it feel like you're far right, but you've just kind of stayed in the same place the whole time.
I know.
And it's like, we haven't been the ones that have moved. We simply stayed relatively where we've been for the past 10 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. And even just thinking about that Twitter post about, you know, the Liberal Party, the NDP, the Canadian Greens, and the Bloc Québécois entering into private discussions to acknowledge the serious national security threat posed by Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative, or the Canadian Conservative Party. It's like, why are we having this conversation? Like, it's just, it's wild to think that we're going to like somehow need to shut down voices within our own country and, you know, stop this other side from speaking because, you know, it's just so awful. It's like, no, we need to be having conversations, different voices, different opinions, come to the table, come to that middle ground. Like, this scared me when you sent that. I was like, I shouldn't say scared, it just alarmed me, I guess, where I was just like, oh no, this is exactly what we don't want. We don't want groupthink. We want diversity of thought. And to think that that's like not a leftist ideal anymore. It's like, what happened? Like, what happened here? So yeah, but it's like you said, like I talk to my people in my community and in my circles now, and people are like, oh, you're pretty conservative. And it's like, I'm literally working for a nonprofit that's like all-inclusive hockey team where you have gay people, newcomers, old people, women, young people, everybody. And then my other nonprofit that I'm working with right now is on decriminalization of drugs so that people can be helped. And it's just like,
it's a pretty left-leaning values.
I was just going to say, it's like, what? And they're like, no, I don't know, but you support Pierre Poilievre. And I was like, I just don't support policies that don't work.
pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I think that's where I'm, you know, when I'm starting to see people in politics or in our government who are saying that got to keep an eye out what the states are doing. We want to be like them. And then I'm seeing that rhetoric throughout just social media in general. It's like, oh, we're starting to become more like the states. How did this even happen? We're so far right now. There's like far right extremists in our midst. And because they are questioning what's happening with how close we're getting to an international organization that doesn't care about us. They're questioning our lack of housing, and that seems like no one cares about it. They're questioning a carbon tax that doesn't seem to be stopping any wildfires that are happening in our country.
Yeah.
Like, these are things we're questioning. They're not. This isn't far right, but it's pretty much, and then in general, populism is being sneered at and thought of as lesser than, and it's just most of everybody's just having the same problems. We're all broke, trying to make ends meet, and things are getting worse. And then we're being then gaslighting's happening, saying that's not happening.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the gaslighting that's getting me, and we're seeing it in articles too. Like when we posted that like extra video about like all the different articles that were that were citing the same story. And it's like, and then when I like commented on it, on that individual's like post, the people that were like, oh no, this is just the way it is. Like, this is totally fine. This is good. Like, don't worry about it. It's like, why are you defending this? And they're like, well, do you not understand how news media works? Ha 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 ha. And it was like, what? It's like,
why are we accepting this?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that I don't understand how news media works. I'm saying that I don't accept this kind of reporting. I think that this is harmful. And I don't understand how that's a right-wing view to think that I want diversity of thought, diversity in our media, and then to just be completely gaslit was just wild for me. But
yeah, I mean, people, I mean, that's what happens, right? They'll smear you and try to wipe you out if you have that thought that's different than the machine. Essentially, it's the machine at this point. And it was interesting. Obviously, we dropped this song at the end of our extra episode last week talking about what's going on with the Poilievre stuff, but the Oliver Anthony song, which is like popping off like crazy.
mm-hmm.
What are we at now here with in terms of views for the sucker? We're looking at 25 million views now.
Yeah, well, it's Richmond, north of Richmond,
Yeah,
which I thought was funny because it applies in so many situations. I was like, oh, like Richmond, Virginia is south of Washington D.C., so that's what they're probably talking about. But I was like, also you have a little town in Ottawa, or like just outside Ottawa, just south of Ottawa. It's called Richmond, and then you have Richmond, BC, and the Richmond station below Toronto City Hall. It's like, yeah, you could just apply it anywhere. It kind of works.
Yeah, here it is, right? Like, this is just giving you an idea of how it's being viewed in media. CNN, title of the article: "This little known country song became a chart-topping anthem for conservatives almost overnight." Bro, he's literally talking about everybody. Like, what was right-leaning about what he sang about?
Yeah.
It was one of the most inclusive songs. Like, let's compare that to, Try That in a Small Town.
Oh God.
I found one was a lot more divisive than the other.
Yeah.
One was just singing about struggles that we're all feeling.
Yeah,
And
I listened to that one and I was just like, yeah, I see myself in that, where it's like you're just trying hard to do the best that you can, and it just never seems to be enough.
Mhm.
And people are out there struggling. Like, food bank usage is at an all-time high, homelessness is at an all-time high. It's like these kind of things like that are affecting everyone regardless of race, gender, political orientation, anything. And like somebody's singing about it, and it's like, don't draw attention to this. That's a right-leaning thing to do. It's like, what?
That's how the game's played, right? The group think, as you said, right? I think that's what was concerning back to the Joly comment,
Mm-hmm.
where we're keeping a close eye on what's happening in the States because we want everyone to think the same up here. We don't want those politics and those ideas to come up here. What about those politics are so concerning? What's so threatening? I'd love the description. Give the description of why it's so concerning to me. I'd love to hear them.
I think from what I know, from what people have said, is that what's threatening is the idea of the division that you see so blatantly in the States. But the problem is, like, that's here too. It's just not as blatant in your face.
I don't
And
know,
it's
man.
funny, like you see
Calling
it when
everyone
like
racist when they don't agree with you is pretty blatant.
True. But what I'm saying is, like, you see it when people go to the polls. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And people are having these conversations in quiet rooms where their jobs won't be affected. So like the conversations are still happening. It's just the States is very much like America, and then they like shout their point of view at the other person. Whereas Canada is like, you got a few people shouting their point of view, and then everybody else is just kind of quietly in the back room going, I don't really buy this.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, I think that's what people are worried about. Is they're worried like, oh, the political divide that you see in the States, we don't want that here. It's like, it's already here. It's already happened. Yeah. People are already feeling it.
I mean, yeah, look at all the articles that came out about Poilievre denouncing the WEF.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's all you need to know right there. And this goes into kind of our next segment here, because it was, that article got written up and Poilievre spoke against it. He said it was a smear job. Then he went to PEI to talk about the gas prices. and he was then questioned by a reporter about this whole scenario and what was happening. And I thought it was an interesting interaction, and I think most people probably heard it by now, but we'll share it here with you.
Hello, Mr. Poilievre. A number of your own comments and actions have been characterized as dog whistling to
By
the
who?
far right.
By who?
By a number of
By
different.
who?
But I think it's been
By
characterized
who?
by that way. But
By
are
who?
you trying to
Sorry,
court? Are
I
you
just
trying
need
to
I
court
need to
the
clarify.
far right
Sorry,
vote?
I just need to clarify. By who?
By a number
By-
of different experts and a number of
Who are the
different people
experts?
who work
Who are the
work in this.
experts?
Okay, well, I think
All
it's
right.
been established that
Right.
this is a
I-
concern.
it's
Are
not-
you trying to court the far right vote?
Who are these experts? You say that there are experts who are saying this. Who are they?
My question is, are you trying to court the
Sorry,
far right vote?
I am sorry. Your question seems to be based on a false premise. You can't even tell me who these experts are. It sounds like it's just a CBC smear job. Thank you.
But
Next.
Yeah. And like that's the thing is if you can't provide said sources, like it's not a real question. Like that's what I feel like. I mean, it just recently came out in New Brunswick that their premier there, who is very big on changing the rules around schools and trans rights for students, and he was like, I've heard from a number of parents and emails and people like that were concerned. He's like, and that's why I acted. And then when people tried to FOI pop it or do a freedom of information, they had to come back and say, like, actually there was no emails, there's been no calls, there's nothing that we can pull to actually support this comment. And he basically got smeared because he totally lied. And like that's the thing is like when you are discussing a point and you try and say that this is the idea of many people, it's like you have to provide those many people, because otherwise you're just peddling your own agenda and trying to make it look like other people agree. So yeah, when I actually saw that interview come over my TikTok, and I saw that and I was like, yeah, you're right. Call out the main point in there. Like, who are the experts? Who's saying this?
Yeah. And shout out Andy Lee for calling out who the expert was, because we read the article on the show, and the main guy they talked to was Kazir Ahmed, who was a political science or something. Yeah, I think something along that lines.
Political science academic
out of Winnipeg, I believe it was.
Yeah,
and he got called out because Andy Lee did her thing, found out that he's a federal grant recipient and a Liberal Party donor.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Definitely unbiased, I'd say.
Yeah, he knew what he was talking about. We could trust the experts on this one.
Yeah. Somebody actually local that I think that people should follow. I know her personally because she was a professor of mine when I did my master's. And now I'm totally spacing on her name, but she's a Dal political science commenter and works out of the School of Public Policy at Dal and is the head of that. She does like the Masters of Public Administration. She's the head administrator for that. She often comes on CTV, CBC, Global, different like news sources will have her on to actually comment on different things happening in our political sphere. And she does a really, really good job giving a very balanced, very like down to earth, real approach to things. And knowing her personally, like she's a no BS kind of lady. She knows her stuff, and that she's also just like has a really like good, compassionate soul to her. So I'd say like definitely we'll find her stuff and link her in there. I can't believe I'm spacing on her name, but yeah, no, really, really good person to listen to. And they often feature her because of her balanced perspective on the political side of things. And she doesn't receive any kind of grants or or donate to political parties, which is kind of nice.
Right. We love to see that, right?
Yeah.
But I think that was a great point, because the thing with Pierre is, love him or hate him, he seems to be 2 steps ahead of everybody. And he knows what he's doing. He knows how he specifically words things in a very purposeful way. And he knows or is aware of the pitfalls that you're trying to lay for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries to catch you in them. And that was one of the scenarios. I think he knew a fair amount about who the expert was in this article, and he wanted them to name him, and so he wanted to call it out in that meeting, and then unfortunately enough, the reporter didn't even know who the expert was, so it made her look even worse.
So I remembered her first name, and so I just looked her up really quickly for everybody. Lori Turnbull, excellent commentator on political issues. Follow her stuff. She knows what she's talking about.
How you spell Lori?
Lori.
Perfect. Sounds good. Yep. And that's kind of where things are at, and that's where we are. And with that being the backdrop, these are some of the tweets that we've been seeing. You shared one earlier, which was we were going to share that one. It was a pretty alarming tweet. But also, I'll still reread the opening paragraph because that was concerning.
Yeah.
This man said, "I would welcome it if the major federal, ostensibly progressive political parties, Liberal, NDP, Canadian Greens, and Bloc Québécois, would enter into private discussions to first acknowledge the serious national security threat posed by Pierre Poilievre and the CPC, and second, to discuss strengthening Canada's electoral system and making criminal code reforms to protect Canadians personally, their legal and democratic institutions, and their economy."
So the first concern I have is in the very first line. It's like the ostensibly progressive political parties. By whose measure, and by whose account? Is it progressive? The private discussions.
Yeah.
The national security threat. So that's like calling on using like different emergency measures that we have, because we used them before, and then this idea of like making criminal code reforms, like those are the things that stuck out in that paragraph that I was just like, red flag, holy crap, we've got a red friggin' parade happening with this comment. Yeah. I don't know.
And that's the thing is, a response to that tweet was, it got it, like there's responses like this throughout the tweet that was really concerning to me.
Yeah.
And this man said, "All conservative voters care about beyond keeping women and non-whites and the poor out of sight is taxes. Yet all these climate emergencies are expensive to deal with, and they don't put it together. Maybe if we all have a buddy program where we educate one, it may work."
Wow. And it's like, so tell me how the carbon tax got spent.
Yeah. Where was the transparency on that one? And secondly, I tweeted that one on our Elevate podcast Twitter account. And I just had to say it plain as day. I said, "It is these kind of heinous broad statements spewed by those on the left that are polluting the political rhetoric in Canada. The amount of people agreeing with the statement is equally troubling."
Yeah.
And he responded to it. And he said, "Pierre literally used men going their own way hashtags on social media and specifically wants their support. These are men who despise women. They are the heinous ones." And all I could say back was, a hashtag is your reasoning for calling a swath of people racist and sexist. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. That's where the rhetoric's at, y'all.
Yep.
So,
and
concerning.
Yeah. And just the amount of people like, I couldn't agree more. And then this, like the actual, like Stephen Best, the person who actually wrote the original tweet, like in his comments writes, "Divide, conquer, steal." It's like, what? Like just yeah.
And so the reason why we're bringing this up is because these things are being shared. These things are being, people think these ideas, and there's many who agree with them. And I'm just here just to call it out for what it is, and to shine light on it, because it is concerning, to say the least, that we are so quickly and willingly just to destroy each other over what we think each other believe versus what we actually believe.
Yep. And if it isn't that, we'll have some kind of virus to kick us out.
Yep. Totally. Speaking of viruses, we love them, right?
Yeah.
Apparently our new health minister agrees as well. Mark Holland came out of the woodwork, eh? And he dropped a good old fun. Get out of the way. He dropped a good old presser on us the other day, talking about how they're monitoring COVID-19 very closely amid early signs and cases on the rise.
Yeah, I wish she would go back into the woodwork, honestly. But yeah, no, it's funny because like my wife, who is a health professional, works in a hospital in clinical settings, has said like, masks work in a clinical setting in a hospital. There's a reason why your surgeons all are gowned up and have special hand washing procedures and stuff like that. Like in a hospital, there's lots of bugs, there's lots of viruses and things like that. That's where masks belong, is to keep the sick people away from the healthy people trying to treat them. Like you alone in your car, like driving with a mask on, isn't doing anything. Or walking down the sidewalk, or like any of this stuff. Like it just, like these were the kind of things that just like blew my mind. I'm like, like it's like you can have different masking policies and be watching different viruses and checking epidemiology, but it's like, if you're not going to make common sense rules afterwards, after you've seen all this stuff, it's like, what is the point? But
yeah. Well, it's more so like we can get into like the nitty gritty of it, but more so my concern with this in general was why this hasn't been a topic of debate on a federal level for quite some time. Why now?
You need a new threat. You need a new thing to scare people with. And it's like, that's what I've been noticing with our current government. It's just like, be afraid of Pierre Poilievre, be afraid of COVID-19, be afraid of what's happening in the States, be afraid. Like, it's just be afraid and we will take care of you. And anything other than us, you're in for a worse ride. And so that's what they're going off of. They're going off this idea of fear mongering, and the media is loving it because it gets clicks. So
totally. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that was a question I had to ask myself, right? Was why? Like when I first saw this come up on my timeline, I all I could ask was why. This felt like priming is how it felt to me.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not going to be the jabroni. I'm going to play this for everybody so you can hear, and I'll be as transparent as I can possibly be. You make your own conclusions of, what was said here, and you decide of like, why is this happening? Why was this being shared at this point?
So first of all, we're monitoring the situation very closely, obviously with EG5 and the various subvariants of Omicron. We're evaluating on a daily basis what the case count is and what the trajectory is. This is fully expected. We knew that as we lead into fall, that we'll see an increase in the case count. The critical thing right now is for everybody to get their vaccinations up to date, for people to take appropriate health precautions. But in terms of our readiness, we are ready and working with not only our provincial and territorial partners, but international partners on monitoring, and are ready to take action as is needed as this situation evolves.
When he's a bad public speaker. I was having a really hard time hearing the message over just like and I was like, oh man, like you're a political figurehead, like sign up for one of those Toastmasters courses or classes.
You didn't hear? He did. It was led by Justin Trudeau.
Amazing.
They all talk the same, which is like they all like can't speak straight and can't give a cohesive sentence at any point. There hasn't been one person in the Liberal Party where I'm like, oh, they're a good speaker.
Well spoken. Well, I mean, you could always just have Chrystia Freeland do your speeches because, they're always so hopeful.
Dude, and those who don't know what Reg is referring to, Chrystia Freeland did a
commencement speech?
Commencement speech down in Boston at Fenway, and it was terrible. It was one of the worst speeches I've heard in my life. I would hate it if I was graduating and be like, wow, I feel so hopeful right now. And why are we getting the Canadian Minister of Finance down here to talk to us? Like, what's up with that? Get me Joe Byron.
Yeah, it was like, for anybody who hasn't watched it, like the gist was like, she's like, you're graduating into a time when the polar ice caps are melting, homelessness is terrible, and everything's falling apart. So this is a pivotal moment for you. Good luck. It's like, what?
Spot on. That's exactly what
Yeah.
was said. Like, Reg is not exaggerating. She literally mentioned these things, all the terrible things they're going through, and said, but it's a pivotal time in history where you can make the difference. You're just like, bro.
I didn't even think she said make the difference. It was just like, you have to make a choice. And it was like,
Oh yeah, that's
and
right.
that was what I thought was kind of sinister about it, right? It was like, make a choice for what are we saying? Anyway, but yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting to hear different people speak, and sometimes you hear somebody speak and you're like, I know you're full of crap, but I just want to hear what you have to say. And then sometimes you're just like, you're really disappointed because you're like, man, you're representing our country right now and you're doing a bad job.
Yep. Exactly it. And so it goes back to my question with Mark Holland, the Minister of Health. Why is he doing this presser? Why is he answering these questions? Why is this new COVID strain on the radar? Which brings us to our favorite man on the planet, Alex Jones. And he has a couple things to say. We'll watch the first minute and a half of what he was talking about, but essentially he received news from a couple TSA whistleblowers of what they've told him is coming down the pipe here in the next 3 months. So,
And when we say our favorite person on the planet, I think we need to say your favorite person on the planet.
I'm speaking for all the listeners, bro.
This man is ridiculous.
He's not low, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got a call yesterday. An individual was in town, and they wanted to meet with me that I know well, and they are a high-level manager in the TSA. And I went and met with them and had a cup of coffee with them, and they said, you got to warn people. Tuesday, we got called in, the managers, and told that by the middle of September, that the new policy is being written, that this is done. They were told this is happening. This is not hypothetical. You will all have to wear masks again, and so will airport employees. Then by the middle of October, they are going to say that everyone flying has to wear a mask. And in the meetings, people began to ask them, well, I mean, why is this happening? They said, well, because of the new variant in Canada and because of the WHO, they may, declare this. But regardless, we've been told this is going to happen.
I hope he's wrong. I hope that he's not. I hope it's clickbait. The problem is, I would not be surprised in the least if this is actually something that happens. Painful, but
your response told me everything via text when I sent that to you. You said no. Actually, no, your exact words. Actually, I'll read out the text for itself right now. It was great. It was perfect for a perfect response. And I could hear your voice pretty clear as day when I read the text. And you said, hell no, I'm not going back to pandemic life. It just ain't happening. Masks are for hospitals, not everyday life.
Yeah. That was my initial reaction was, hell no. No way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things as I said, I hope he's wrong too. And I kind of would have, if I just saw that video on its own, I kind of been like, yeah, whatever. But when I saw that paired with the Mark Holland presser from earlier last week,
yeah,
that was, especially when he mentioned Canada, I was kind of like, okay,
crap,
here we go.
I know.
Have to,
and like I said to you via text, I said, they've been doing everything they can to slow down our economy, to crush our economy via interest spikes. It's like, what would be the ultimate nail in the coffin would be another lockdown, another bunch of restrictions, another, moratorium on basically daily life. So that's very fear-mongering of me. So I will say, no, that's not the case, but the mind wanders. So I don't want to I don't want to put that out in the ether that that's the case, but it's just like sometimes you're like, man, what the heck? What the heck is happening here?
Well, the TSA thing, I'm not totally surprised by, because honestly, at this point, that's really the only thing the federal government has control over, was traveling. Because the conservative provincial governments aren't going to go along with it.
No.
So, and they're the ones who kind of have to institute those guidelines. I think they'll try and put pressure politically and socially on people to put pressure on their provincial governments. But I just don't. I mean, maybe I'm hoping for the best, but I just don't see it happening. I think there'll be more loud voices against it than for it at this point.
Yeah, I think that people are still fatigued from everything that's been happening in our world recently and since COVID. That I think that people won't put up with it. I think that people are too far on the spectrum right now of fatigue, that they just won't. So I think you'll push people into outright riots. You'll have everybody with text messages like mine being like, hell no. Like, it's just like
the quiet talks will be out in the open.
Oh yeah, exactly. You want to push us to look more like America? Do that.
Yeah, true. You know what?
But
maybe that's the plan.
Oh God, no.
See, these people can't take care of themselves. You need to help them. We need to help them keep their anger in check. So
what we need a good social credit system that allows people to monitor themselves and self-regulate.
Oh, you're right. That's a great idea. I think that's what we need to do.
Yep. Maybe if we had like a new platform that could come in and control all of our media and our financial things, just expedite it,
Make it real quick. It'll make our passport backlogs look super slow.
I don't know.
All of a sudden, everyone wants to be on this new system. All of a sudden, the processing times are lightning speed.
Yep.
Gee, what a time, man. Well, that was a lot to get through, and that was a fun time.
It was. Thanks for sticking with us through it, because I think that that's a big thing, is like there's a lot happening, a lot that we can speculate on, a lot that we don't even know, but just kind of like talking it out sometimes is a good way to just sort it out, make sense of it, laugh at it, and just kind of keep on keeping on, because otherwise it'll make you crazy.
And just like what I think it was Reagan's plan was back in the day, his fight against drugs, just say no. Just say no.
Oh God.
Just say no. That's all I'll say is no matter what happens, just say no. Let's go. Just say no. There we go. Well, we love you all so much. So whether you be fighting the man,
building the front porch, because that was what my weekend was,
or soaking by the pool, whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are, we love you. We're out. Peace.